Well, this is exactly what Donald Trump claimed during his latest rally. He painted a terrifying and completely unfounded picture where kids are supposedly returning home from school having transitioned into a different gender. Let's pause for a second and really think about that. There's absolutely zero evidence supporting Trump's claim. Not a single student in the United States is going to school and returning home as a different gender, let alone after undergoing surgery during school hours. It's absurd. Yet, Trump continues to say things like this, relying on the fact that many in his audience will take his every word at face value. It's hard to believe how little respect Trump seems to have for his own supporters. He feeds them lies, lazy, easily debunked lies, and assumes they won't question him. For someone who claims to love America and its people, his disdain for their intelligence is shocking. When pressed for evidence, Trump's spokesperson, Carolyn Leavitt, gave a classic example of deflection. She claimed, "I've personally spoken to parents whose children were transitioning and called different names at school without the parents being notified." She added that the cases didn't make the news because the parents feared backlash. Notice how she didn't provide any actual evidence? There are no verifiable reports, just vague anecdotes. Yet, these unfounded stories are passed off as the truth. It's remarkable but not surprising, given that Trump has been pushing this same baseless narrative repeatedly. Just last week, he made a nearly identical claim, stating, "Your kid goes to school and comes home after a few days with an operation. The school decides what happens to your child, and 15 years later, they're left wondering, who did this to me?" Whether Trump believes his own lies or is simply exploiting his supporters for political gain, the fact that this fiction has become a staple of his speeches tells us a lot about his campaign. Instead of addressing real issues, he relies on straight-up disinformation. And here's a thought. Maybe, just maybe, instead of obsessing over imaginary transition surgeries in schools, Republicans could focus on addressing the very real issue of school shootings. But why do that when it's easier to whip up outrage over trans kids, drag queens, and queer books? Let me ask this. How many kids have actually died in schools this year because of LGBT books? I'm going to guess it's significantly fewer than the number of children who have died due to gun violence, specifically from AR-15s. Yet, when confronted with the latest mass shooting, Trump's response to the tragedy was, "It's horrible to see that happening, but we have to get over it." That's it. Get over it. No solutions, no anger, no passion. Compare that to how worked up he gets over his imagined crisis of children being forced into gender transition surgeries. But it's not just Trump. Other Republicans are parroting the same defeatist stance on gun violence. Take J.D. Vance, for example. He recently said, "I don't want my kids to go to a school that needs extra security, but that's the reality we live in." Really? The reality we live in? As if he, a sitting politician, is powerless to change it. These people are in positions where they could make real change. They could pass legislation to prevent dangerous individuals from obtaining guns. But instead, they throw up their hands and say, "Oh well, there's nothing we can do." If your political philosophy involves resigning to the fact that kids will die in school shootings, then that philosophy is absolute garbage. And yet, while Trump and Vance play helpless on gun violence, they seem to have endless energy to stoke fear about non-existent threats. If that wasn't enough, Trump is also now claiming that immigrants are, and I quote, like Hannibal Lecter. He literally said that Hannibal Lecter is representative of people coming into our country. Yes, the fictional cannibal who will have you for dinner is apparently who Trump believes immigrants represent. This isn't just fearmongering. It's the desperate, last-ditch effort of a floundering campaign. Trump's narrative has escalated to a point where immigrants are portrayed as dangerous, flesh-eating monsters, and kids are supposedly having surgeries in algebra class.
Why?
Because his campaign is sinking, and he's trying to scare people into supporting him. In the end, this isn't about truth or facts. It's about pushing an agenda built on fear and lies. Trump thrives on convincing people that America is a terrible, broken place. As Minnesota Governor Tim Walz pointed out, Trump and his ilk want to make people believe our system is broken, that there's nothing but pessimism and doom ahead. But here's the thing, they're not just complaining about America, they're rooting against it. They don't believe in the people who built this country. They want to go back to a time when it only served the wealthy, powerful, and predominantly white men. The America that Trump wants isn't about lifting up the working class, women, minorities, or anyone who isn't a wealthy, well-connected man. It's about serving his interests and the interests of people like him. He doesn't care about the issues affecting everyday Americans. He only cares about himself.